guys. I'm Andrew. I'm a former visual effects artist. I'm a visual effects educator. I'll be moderating this session in how to encourage creativity in visual effects education. Because this is an Indian VFX Summit, I'll mention that I have taught many classes in India personally before. It was a few years ago, but I'm really excited to be here and to moderate what you guys think of creativity and education. So I'm going to start with going around the room. You guys can introduce yourselves. So Junaid, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm based in London. I'm a founder of a small VFX boutique in London called Blam Pictures. I'm also director commercials. I've recently directed debut in with a feature film called War of the Worlds. It's a still an indie film, so my passion is more towards using VFX to tell stories. So I like to stay small and just explore the creative side of it as much as possible. So that's what motivates me. Yeah.
Cool. And just for the purpose of the session, I also want to ask you guys where you went to school, or did you go to school, or?
I went to Bournemouth University.
Bournemouth, yep. Got it. Okay. And Matt, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm an art director, creative director. I recently started a company called Fabricated Madness. We do NFT-based projects, and we're creating a video game for the metaverse right now. It's really trendy, but we've been working on NFTs for about a year. Before that, I worked in animation for 10 years on animated movie projects. I got my start in video games for the PlayStation 2. And then we're in the middle of all of that, basically worked at Skywalker Ranch on the Clone Wars animated series. Just been doing a lot of concept design, world building, stuff like that. I graduated from Art Center College of Design.
Where's that at?
That's out of Pasadena.
Cool. California. And Bournemouth, obviously, for those that don't know, that's in London, right? Or London area?
Yeah, that's outside London.
Yeah. And then Chris, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Christopher Lee Zammit. I started off as a texture artist, texturing a lot of things for like Weta and ILM, Digital Domain, Sony, DNEG. I've done characters like Megatron and Hot Rod for Transformers movies. I've worked on the Death Star for Star Wars. I've done the Little Legs Deadpool, helped design Cable. I'm also a concept artist. An art director, so I helped design Cable. I helped design characters like Time in Alice Through the Looking Glass. Currently now I'm a visual effects supervisor. I just finished a show called Halo for Amblin. And now I'm here today.
And where'd you get your education from?
I went to Sheridan College. That was about 18 years ago.
Cool. And that's where's that at?
Sheridan College is in Oakville, Ontario,
Canada. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. So I'm going to ask some questions about creativity in VFX education. In about a minute and a half for your answers, I think. It serves the time we have. So I'll kind of do around the room here. The first thing is about project-based learning. So I just want you guys to tell me about what you feel the role of project-based learning is in your craft. So basically, is it a good choice for the field? And how do you think it affects, if you're a student, how do you think that affects your outcomes? If you're a, educator or a trainer or a school, like how do you think that might influence the school's workings there, the educators' classes and such? Let's start with you, Chris.
So I think project-based learning is important for educators and students alike. Diving right into a project and having to solve a problem to get out of that is crucial. So I think that when you sort of give yourself the first answer, you might decide that that's like the safe route. But creativity comes in with coming up with something different entirely. So like diving into a project and challenging yourself to put something else together usually is like the best answer to sort of jog that creativity. Your brain is going to come up with the answer that is like, it's kind of like electricity where you sort of your ideas will go straight to the shortest route, right, to get that answer solved. But creativity comes.
So tell me about a specific example, because I feel like we're talking in abstract here. So if I'm a student,
Yeah.
what does that mean for me? Like, what's a specific example you did that on?
So like for something like Halo, I can't talk too much about the project, but we have when you're designing elements for the show, you've got to solve the problem of what the thing is in the show that means something to the fans and everybody who understands the world of Halo. So things that are already established. Then you need to sort of take it to that next level where it's creative and interesting to a viewer for a live action VFX background. So that if you're taking that element and creating things that are in real life and mixing them with like this fantasy world, this is where you're going to start to creatively challenge yourself into creating something that is realistic and feels real.
Yeah. So basically, if I have a project that I want to put on my first demo reel or something, then instead of just kind of going blind, I need to be taking stuff from other places and real life reference and kind of incorporating that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So when you look at the object or think about what the drawing or the sketch is, take things that in real life that remind you of that, and try to sort of build that thing in your mind as what it would be to be real. So a lot of these things, especially for like science fiction and fantasy, these things don't exist. And in order for us to make them believable, we have to ground them in reality.
Yeah.
So that's where the challenge comes, is to sort of like challenge yourself to look for things in real life that would, tell a story about how that thing is built.
Yeah, so we have like real reference and we have storytelling, and that sounds a lot harder than just randomly doing stuff, right? Like, so that's where I guess where the project-based approach comes in and really challenges people, huh?
Yeah, it comes into basically the project is going to give you your challenge.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, and let's see. So, Junaid, can you tell me a little bit about the same question, the role of project-based learning, how it affects your personal work, and also its role in schools and student work and things like that?
Project-based, I think it's very crucial in terms of you're kind of resimulating the production environment, rather than just like doing tutorials, which is meant to come out with the good results for that particular task. But to use it in a project is totally different together, because you're trying to tell a story.
Easier or harder?
It's a lot harder and practical.
Yeah.
It is practical, and there's always, you find a smart way to solve the problems. Sometimes
so it helps them learn by finding smart ways to do stuff.
Yeah, smart ways. And sometimes the solution does not need to be like a very complicated. It can be simple. You can, let's say for simulation, you can do a lot of simulation, locally, and you can attach characters in a lot of ways, which makes it look like it's actually attached to the character and doing dynamically. So you come out with all these solutions, which helps you, when you're gonna go and do like a professional jobs, it will help you those small little tricks and techniques, and you will come out with problems and you put it on forums, and people will help you and stuff like that. I think it's quite crucial.
So what's the last thing you did that on, or like, I mean, I'm not asking anyone to talk about stuff they can't talk about, but it just in terms of just like a project-based situation you had to do that process on. What's something you had to do that on?
Like it's all the time, I've always worked for the project, and because once you get in professional environment, you always work on the project. So it's always like because FX, I've seen some of your tutorials I do, and I think there's a lot of stuff for Houdini, isn't it? So I'm a big time Houdini user, and with FX, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think I've come across some of your tutorials, isn't it? Online. I think some of them with the side effects as well, isn't it? So like that. So I mean, basically, especially with the simulation side of things can get really complicated if you don't do it in a smart way. Especially with the simulation, whether you're doing cloud simulation or you're doing anything with the particles, making sure you just doing in the right scale, and trying to do as much as locally as possible, then attach to then move to different.
Because if it's not a real project, I guess the scale doesn't really matter, right? But if it's a real project, then you have to really have all those ducks in a row, so to speak, and really kind of put it all together.
You have to apply multiple shots and stuff like that. So I think it's really important. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Matt, tell me a bit about how project learning you think it has its role and what its role is in education.
I think it's interesting what you can learn on a project based on what you learned in school. I mean, just going 20 years back, I have an interesting experience. I was, learning how to be a designer at Art Center through school. I didn't truly learn my craft until I started working in the field.
That makes sense, yeah.
A perfect example of this was, I was taking perspective courses and getting all my perspective right, but then I started working at an animation studio, Classic Chupo, for the Rugrats back in the day, and my art director had me drawing through the form freehand to create the perspective of designs, and I found my process got a lot faster that way instead of taking certain points and trying to make it all perfect. Doing it that way. Also, when you work in the field, you're challenged with new, challenges that you may have never even thought you were capable of. Like I got tasked with doing a stage design for EDM concerts and designing all the textures for that. But it was easy to apply my skill set that I learned throughout the years to that. The interesting thing is you'll find working with a team. The team itself will help educate you on ways to get through those problem solving issues.
Right, because you don't ever have the concept of a team if it's just an academic assignment, right? So it has to be a project.
Yeah.
You might be able to have a team on it.
Collaborative efforts, working with other people and sharing ideas will help, direct you in a way that you may not have expected.
Cool.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess in summary, from what you guys have told me, project-based learning makes it really real, right? And it forces you to overcome lots of things and be grounded in reality, whether it's, like Chris said, grounded in reference from reality, or Junaid said, grounded in physical forces like gravity and scale and things like that, or working with a collaborative team. But yeah, it seems like it kind of has this grounding effect and keeps it real for and pushes. Obviously, it's much more difficult than just an academic study.
You also just touched on something really important there too. Is that it's a collaborative thing. VFX is like a group of people that are trying to make one piece of art together. Yeah. So not only
not in their own world, huh?
You've got a challenge. Yeah, you've got the challenge of coming together with ideas with others.
Cool. All right, so that's good, guys. All right, next question here. So this is about geography. So you guys are scattered a bit throughout the world here, and wondering what specific activities your country does as far as project-based learning. So a bit of an abstract question. So can you tell me maybe how you learned, or maybe I don't know, basically. What can you say about just the style of collaboration in your specific location as opposed to maybe other locations? Because I've taught in India. I know in Chennai, it's a very different style of collaboration than it might be in London or in California. I've worked in actually 2 out of 3 of those places, so I know it's different. So tell me a little bit about how you might think collaboration, project-based learning differs from country to country here, or projects differ from country to country. What about you, Matt?
I mean, if you're speaking of literally right now in our era of video conferencing, it's spread across the globe. Doesn't matter where you live. I was on a movie project a year ago. We would portal in, share our designs, share ideas, and there was 30 different people all in one meeting coming from all over the world, problem solving and working together. But before, that was trendy and everyone was working from home. A lot of my offices that I worked at were open floor plan. No one really had a cubicle, so you were literally just in a big room with a lot of desks, and you could see everyone's work and get up from your desk and walk over and check things out. Other spaces I worked in are very closed in, where you're in a box, or you're in an office where you have your own space and you're just closed off from the rest of the team. And I don't think that works for a lot of people, especially now. But it's funny in a way that that's happening now, because once the meeting's over and we're all stop talking with each other from around the world, we're just focused on our desk, our work, and you really rely on your knowledge and creativity to try and get the job done. There is no one that you can just like walk over to, but you're only a click away from getting feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And what about you, Chris? So you're based in working in Chennai right now, right? And
Toronto.
Oh, I'm sorry, Toronto. And okay, so then tell me about like how collaboration and projects kind of come together there.
Well, for me in Toronto, it's been work from home, so I could be pretty much anywhere in the world right now, other than time zones. That's one thing to notice is that when I was working in Montreal before this, it's different than Vancouver, it's different than New Zealand, it's different than everybody sort of has a different style of working, as well as the individual studios. Like I noticed the DNEG, which I think would be more like the London type of thing, is they have a group of like maybe 12 people in a room. And they seem to sort of control how many members of people are collaborating with each other, and some of them work. The last place I was at in Toronto had everybody, the entire office is in one gigantic room. So that can be good. Project-based learning with a lot of studios, not just really countries, is they tend to put similar disciplines in similar areas, right? Some smaller places are going to obviously not have that much real estate, so they're going to put everybody in one giant room. But working from home has changed all of that. So I can't even go to my artist desk to see how they're doing. I've got to do a video call sharing and that. So you are now sort of creating the size that you want, that you can sort of like say, oh yeah, just bring these 3 people in.
And do you think that's a good thing or bad thing, or also for student work, is that a good thing or bad thing?
Personally, I don't like it. I kind of felt that I think one of the magic things about this industry and what I love so much about it is collaborating with other people.
Yeah.
So I really do love being in a room with other people who are like tangibly there. I can see what they're working on their computer, and like you get inspired by seeing what other people are looking at. I think that's what we're missing now is the collaboration, and like just walking by after you're getting a coffee and you walk by like 14 desks and all of them are working on something different, and you're like, holy crap, man, that's amazing.
Maybe you can also kind of get the mood of the production that way too.
Yeah, I really miss seeing what other people were working on. That sort of like got me inspired. Even when I was working on Halo, it was completely remote. So we did have an office, and I was working from the office, and everybody working on the show was sort of like, am I doing a good job? I don't know. And then when I grabbed a few of them and brought them into my office and said, hey, look at this chunk of work from the show. And everybody just got pumped. They were just like, this is going to be amazing. It wasn't until we were seeing each other's works that we really have felt.
So definitely like for student work and schools and stuff, that element should be there for sure.
You also get that not the rivalry, but like the competition.
Yeah.
It's really healthy. It's sort of like, oh my God, that person's doing such a great job. I got to do better.
Yeah, right? Big difference there though, huh?
Because a student wants to get hired, right? You are basically going to be hired from amongst.
Yes, well, that's the hired thing is the next question. So I'm going to pause you there. So
Sure.
Junaid, can you tell me about your locality and kind of like project-based work, how that comes together in your locality?
I mean, the main challenge right now is because of this pandemic is working with the teammates who are like juniors. I mean, seniors are there independent, and you just tell them, you just coordinate with them. They're able to do their jobs. Whereas, sometimes juniors, they get stuck in this cycle.
Yeah, and especially with students, right? Like especially students will get stuck.
So I mean, when they're working together, you just look over the shoulder and somebody's stuck with some problem. You just ask question very casually without any issues. And sometimes you bump into looking at somebody's monitor and it's like, oh, that's not the right way, this way. So you discuss those sort of things and solve the problem, and it's kind of fun in that way. And just learning from others, like somebody's doing, like Christopher said, that I mean, you can bump into somebody who's doing some work and you get excited and you ask some questions and stuff like that. You learn from it. That kind of thing, you're missing it. So I I don't like working remotely that much. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I think I do like mix a little bit hybrid. You want some time for yourself, and sometimes if I have an option, 3 days working like together with the team, and 2 days you just live on your own and do your own things, and that might be the good option.
Yeah, I remember I would work at Digital Domain. I'd work during the work week. It'd be like crazy busy with other people, but then I'd come in on weekends and I'd like leave me alone. I just want to focus.
Exactly. Yeah. I do that in the night, actually. To be honest, like during working hours. I mean, it's because I'm working different time zones with different people.
Yeah.
So I mean, during working hours, just managing, and in the night is the time where I actually work. You know what I mean? So whatever I want to do, I do it in the night.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then is there anything special that like you feel like even maybe before the pandemic, London area was doing that other places weren't doing, as far as like that kind of vibe? Or
London was like, I mean, we went to lockdown twice, and although the lockdown has opened, but still people are not going to studios, and and studios are adapted to work from home. So it's an optional whether you want to come or not. So it's like kind of hybrid. But the good thing is like people get to spend some time with their families and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, let me get on to the we got probably getting into the last third of the session here. So can you guys? I think they definitely want to know this. So you guys are all in production houses. You guys are all higher in the chain of like people that get hired, and you say who gets hired sometimes and all that kind of good stuff. So if you're going to give someone an internship or a junior role at your company, I think in India they call them freshers. So what are you looking for here? Let's start with let's see. Start with you, Junaid. So what are you looking for?
I think a specialist. I mean, whatever you may have like 2 or 3 shots, but do it at the level which you feel like professionally comparable to any other VFX shots. So if you see that quantity is not important, quality is more important. Like even if you do 2 shots and you demonstrate that you understand the lighting, if you're applying for lighting, if you understand the lighting, if you apply for texturings, if you understand the texture part, if you apply for compositing, you understand the compositing part. So I would say quantity is not important. It's just quality, which so you see like there's a potential for we can.
So and a very short follow up to that. So for instance, if I were lighting something and I were to choose like a really complex subject matter with lots of lights, and they were done like 75% what a professional could do, or if I were to do something very simple that didn't have much stuff in it at all, and I was able to do the lighting more like 95% what a professional do, which one would you hire? Because actually it's a kind of a maybe not quantity, but maybe how elaborate it is. So what would you think there?
I think complexity is not so much important. The more important is that you understand the principle of lighting.
Okay.
You're using your tools in a right way.
Okay. So cool. So let's get to Matt here. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the potential of people, like their portfolio may show a certain level of professionalism, but just because they don't actually show exactly what you're looking for your particular project doesn't mean they're capable of not achieving that. I think that in terms of art directors too, we can push them to that level that we're expecting out of people. I think a lot of times in the industry, at least in animation, when you're a concept artist or something like that, or designer, a lot of times if you don't have a very specific portfolio that's tailored to that exact project, you get overlooked. But when I'm hiring, I don't look at it like that. If I see a lot of creativity and potential out of a particular hire, even if they don't have examples of the product we're working on, I can still
Yeah. So, I mean, a follow-up question to what you just said. So, and I remember this as an educator, actually frustrating conversations with recruiters because I knew the student was up here and they said, well, we don't need that for our project. And then they might take someone for that was like half as good, but they were doing something a little more similar to that subject. So as a higher professional yourself, so would you rather have someone that was pretty close to the quality bar you needed, but did a completely unrelated, like you could see it was just an unrelated subject matter. So maybe you're looking for a fire making person, and instead they're really good at water, right? Or
Right.
would you rather have a 50% good fire making person?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of value in people's abilities beyond what I see in their portfolio. If you could just tell that their overall achievement in terms of their portfolio is decent enough.
Okay, well, it's
I
a
feel
tough
like
answer, but I
yeah.
want you to tell the recruiters here. What would you pick?
I mean, the first one I would say.
Okay.
But the reason that recruiters are doing that is because they're tasked with something. If you take it out of VFX and put it into, say, something like, okay, we're building a house and I need a roofer. I need you to go out and find me a roofer. If you go out and find somebody who doesn't show you that they can do a roof and they know how to like dig a trench, then that person isn't like, the recruiter isn't going to know how to hire that person. Right.
So then let's get to you, Chris. So this answer for you could be both towards potential students, internships, juniors, and also recruiters. So how would you weigh in there?
Well, at Milfilm, I was the head of build, so I was hiring for 8 different teams, and so much of my week was hiring new people. And
yeah, that sounds intense.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of great people, and so what I was always looking for was beyond. Most people that were applying to me were already in that room. Like when I was having interviews, they were already in that room because they already proved that they could do the work. Like we looked at their reels and said, yeah, this person has a skill set that I could use. If it's modeling and texturing creatures, then necessarily can't necessarily do environments or trucks and hard surface stuff, right? So if they have a reel that shows that they're well-rounded or very good at one specific thing, then you look for that. But when you actually meet them, the things I'm looking for are things beyond that. So creativity. Do you like to draw outside of work? Do that was how I got my job at ILM in San Francisco, is because they said to me, can you send us some drawings that you've done? And I was like, what? No one's ever asked for that before. And so then I had to sort of redo my reel to also include drawings because they wanted to see if I was an actual artist, right? So showing us something outside of you, and not to mention the fact that when you're sitting there in front of me, I want to know that I can work with you. Like I want to know that I can get to the end of this project and not want to throttle you, right? So like, it's like it's a really important thing to sort of when you're collaborating with somebody to want to be in that room with them as well. So like, do we have a good interview? Like, do the things like you're going to get along with the rest of the team, or if you are really good and you're egotistical about it, you're not going to get hired because the rest of the team isn't going to want to work with you. And like, if you've got one person, it doesn't matter how good they are. If they're off on their own doing their thing and they're not collaborating, that's important to know.
Cool. Okay, so I think thanks very much. I think we're getting into the end of the time here. I just heard a beep or something like that. So, and it looks like it's almost the wrap here. So thanks everybody for your answers and your insights into the field and everything, and hopefully visual effects educators and like myself and potential juniors and students going through the ranks here can take something out of what you said by the project-based stuff and what you're looking for and how different localities are kind of affected and things like that. So thanks very much, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about creativity here. All right. So basically, is creativity measurable? And so if you're looking at a student or a demo reel or something like that, is creativity measurable? And then what kind of scale are you using to measure that creativity, especially with someone that you haven't worked with or something like that? So let's see. So yeah, Junaid, what do you look for? Like, how do you measure someone's creativity?
So I don't just see creativity as beautiful images. Creativity can be used for solving some technically challenging problems. We don't really particularly hire because it tells great stories. I mean, it depends on the department you are in, right? So we tend to hire like to understand. So if you're hiring a lighting guy, so they understand the basics of lighting and things like that. So it's more about craftsmanship than creativity, I guess, and it's just that just getting inspiration, anything from the nature, recreating that sort of thing, using real references and just bending the rules a little bit just to create something interesting. So, I mean, that sort of thing. I mean, nowadays it's more about creating realistic stuff. Like for what I do, it's like more of a realistic visual effects. So you have to understand how what's reflection is like, how the refraction works, those small little things, those principle needs to be clear. So if it's a refraction, what is refraction does, what is refraction, so there is a maths behind as well. So all that thing is, I think, it's an eye to details for what I do.
So basically, if someone were to say, okay, I'm going to be a good artist on a film, would they focus on like being the best artist, or would they focus on that realism that you're talking about? And like, I guess you're saying it's should they hit the realism first and then worry about being creative? Or?
It depends on what are you applying for. It depends what do you like doing. Do what you like doing, but just so some people are concept artists, right? So they have to think out of the box. So they have to come out with the looks which is different, concepts and stuff like that. So if you're a lighting guy, you have to understand the reflection, the real world situations, like what is reflections, how rougher they get on different surfaces, and what is refractions, IOR in water. So various things, and what is IOR, index of refractions, all the, I mean, these are scientific terms as well. So you need some principal knowledge. Even a lot of artists who don't understand the maths behind it, but they do understand what really happened in a real world, and they bend that rule to a certain extent. But you need to understand the principle first in order to bend that rule. So I think it's really important to understand those principles regardless.
Yeah, so basically like start with that understanding and make sure that comes across in the work.
Yeah, realism is always first.
And then they can be creative by kind of bending it into the direction they want for the project, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And what about you, Chris? So trying to get my questions here. I forgot.
I think that,
so how do you measure creativity, and kind of what kind of scale do you use there?
Well, I think creativity can be measured, I guess, with everybody has their own individual context, right? So their own individual cup kind of sort of thing. So some people are more creative than others that I've discovered, like working in different, as creative as you might think you are, you're always going to find somebody who's more creative. And you shouldn't beat yourself up about that. You should just understand that, like, everybody has their own level of creativity. And what you can do is challenge your own self to increase that if you want, right? So I've worked with guys that are so off the charts creative that they make you feel sad. and you're like,
so for instance, in what area? Because I'm not even now, I'm not sure how you're measuring creativity. So like, what do you mean off the charts creative? Like what kind of stuff can they do that other people can't do, for instance?
Okay, so when I was working at ILM, I had to say to myself, okay, I'm creative enough that I got a job here, right? But when I went to work and I worked with other people who are creative, they were like, oh, they just modeled this in one day, or they did this immense thing that the entire world loves because like they went to the movies and everybody loved it. Let's say something for Transformers or something, and then they went home and they sort of made this model, and they came in the next day and showed you this thing, and you're like, how do they do this in one day? And same thing with like Peter Jackson. Here's a guy in 5 years, he made the Lord of the Rings movies, and they're so detailed and so epic and broad in scale. You're like, how can one person do this in one day? So this is somebody who has, so in measuring creativity, it's one person's vision, but other people executing it, right? So when you are with yourself measuring creativity, yes, you can measure your own creativity, and you should be comfortable with the level that you have, because that's what you have to work with, and you can grow it by training yourself to be more creative. But you shouldn't beat yourself up or like feel bad about what you're offering, as long as you're striving to make more. Being creative is also subjective, right? One person's creative idea might be rejected by someone else, right? And so one thing you need to know is like when you do create things in the VFX industry, and what students will come up as, is that you have to detach yourself from the things that you're doing for VFX, right? So VFX is a paid for artwork. There are a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that might be something important for definitely for schools and students to understand. Yeah, it's like they're not, maybe they get to do more of their own creative idea in a school, but then you're on the job. They're getting a paycheck and they have a project to deliver. So maybe they have to kind of measure that creativity, and also kind of ties in with what Junaid was saying. It's like they probably have to start with all of the rules of the environment they're working in or the task they're working in first, and then get creative, after that or something like that.
Well, you'll get an objective when you're working in VFX. Let's say you're a student and you just graduated and you got a job, and you're given your first task. That task is going to be, first of all, somebody's going to give you a task that they think that you can handle. They know that if you're a junior, that they're not going to expect you to do something that's off the charts amazing. It can be amazing, but it'll be a smaller piece of the pie, right? Smaller piece of the puzzle. So when you're there and you're working on something, it should be moderately challenging for you so that you grow. And so if you're creating something, you have to understand there are a whole bunch of levels of approvals that have to go all the way to the executive producer of the production, right? So the thing that you do will have to be signed off by your senior or your lead, who will then sort of be signed off by supervisors, CG supervisor, VFX supervisor, all the way to the on-set supervisor, to the director, to the executive producer, right? So you have to detach yourself from falling in love with what you're doing as well, right? So solve the problem, be as creative as possible about it. The creativity comes in when you are left alone with a problem to solve, right? Your ability to solve that problem and also be creative but it's important to know that you cannot change what has been asked for. You can offer an alternate to say like, here's what you asked for, but what do you think of this as well? That can be rejected or accepted.
I'd say like for me, when I work in big companies, the design to kill your creativity, to be honest. the design to work in a factory situation. The bigger the company you go, the smaller your role is, and more uncertain you are. And so it's not really encouraging for depends what you want to do. For me, I never like. I've done in big companies like with 1,000+ artists, and I really didn't enjoy it. I did for years. Then I was like, I enjoy more with like smaller teams, because you can influence better. You can you can just try to do more with your talent, and at the same time also make sure that you do a personal project. I've seen like majority of the people who actually excel in the field, better positions or doing whatever they're doing, is because they always have like a small little projects on the side, where you don't get an opportunity to do it in a professional environment, and you do it on the side and you build that portfolio. You always have to do that. And I think all the good guys, all the majority of the talented people I met, they always have some sort of like small project on the side. So have that student in you throughout your life is really important.
Yeah, I can speak that there's like just where I'm at in Vancouver, there's just giant companies in Vancouver, and I know so many people from the area, and I might have known them 5 years ago, and they were doing personal projects and just starting in on like smaller companies and getting into big companies, but after 5 years, they might have like lost a little bit of their creativity or been kind of more in the factory mentality, and they stopped doing their own personal projects. And so you're saying it's important to stay with the inner student kind of thing, huh?
Yeah. It's a human, and it's a human mentality as well. Like, if I, like, the moment you start thinking more of like, this is my job, this is what I want to do, this is what I get paid for, and this is what I'm doing, and slowly it's like a slippery slope, right? You're not. Every Monday, you just like slowly like not liking your job. All of it. I mean, look at all this bankers and stuff like that, right? I mean, like all my friends, especially in London, they work in big banks and they make a load of money, but they're not happy because they feel they're not getting to do anything creative, and so they get really jealous by what what I'm doing and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you have that student nature in you all the time, and learning attitude. That's a human instinct as well. You try more. You try more every time, and you have that fire in you.
So it's almost like students should always strive to be more professionals in terms of taking their like realism first and their creativity second, and then professionals should actually in some ways strive to be more like students and keep.
No, you always be students. I think as a creative person, you always have to be a student of learning, whether you're professional or whether you are a student, right?
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point what you're saying, but I find the people who are sort of more wrapped up in their own success and more wrapped up in their own reels and like that often hurt productions. And it's like if they're spending the time trying to make themselves look good and not the movie and not their coworkers, those are the ones that sort of stand out as a problem. And as me, from noticing, managing like 50 people, I can tell the ones that are trying to get ahead on ArtStation and their own personal reels, they're not really considering the other people around them in the collaboration, right? So we all have a small amount of time to create something larger than ourselves. And if you're spending your time trying to get your own career off the ground, but it's a weird balance. You have to keep working, but you're also trying to make the production that you're working on good. If the movie turns out great or the TV show turns out great, then you all look good. But if it's a train wreck and it's bad because different people were off trying to do different things and not looking out for each other, that's when you get a bad production. And I've worked on Cats, so that's about as bad as it gets. So I think that also my advice would be, don't try to go through the ranks too fast. Like, don't try to get your salary and title up too high. Like, take the time to learn what you're doing, because like a good solid foundation for your career. And I've been doing this for 18 years and I was senior for most of those years. I was like, I took it very slow and learned what I was doing, mastered my crafts before sort of going up to the next thing. And that's a really important thing to do. If you go too fast, you don't take in and you don't learn from experience. When you have a number of productions come out and some of them have failed and some of them have done well, those are the learning experiences. So, and again, is also what you're saying, with working with a big company and working with a small company are two different things, very different. If you work for some place like MPC, where you are the smallest cog in a gigantic machine, it is still an important piece. It's still an important cog, right? When you are sort of half the machine because there's 4 people in the company. I know my math isn't very good. It's only 25% of the machine, but you are tasked with doing a lot more things. You learn how to be a generalist when you're working in a small company because you are often tasked with doing a number of disciplines. But when you work for a big company, you are very, very much a specialist. So it depends on what you want for your career. If you want to be somebody who focuses on one specific thing, like I just do texture environments, or I just do lighting. But when you go to a smaller company, that's when you can learn how to sort of like expand.
Yeah, I've met some incredible generalists at small companies, and especially when I was in India, which brings me to my next question. At the time I was there, which was around 10 years ago, I met incredible generalists because they were just very aggressive small companies. I think it's changed quite a bit now. So it brings me to my next question here. So, okay, so basically the question is, having a knowledge of the way visual effects teams work in India, how they, having seen how they work there, and some of the lessons you guys were talking about as far as all your trials and tribulations and thoughts on creativity and career improvement. So what do you suggest for the Indian visual effects teams and companies as far as how to apply that and up their game? Like, what do you want to suggest for India, basically? What should India do? What about you, Junaid?
I'm in an interesting position because I started my career back in India, working for local films like Bollywood films and stuff like that. So then I've studied then I've worked there for 5 years. Then I applied for masters, Bournemouth University. Then started working in MPC, double negative and stuff like that. So, and now I'm back to smaller companies. So now I feel like what I was there back in India doing all the generalist work. So I kind of, I'm enjoying it because, I think that reminds me of so much you can do it with so little resources you have.
I'm actually just curious, like where in India were you working?
I was in Mumbai.
Yeah, that's where I was
in
too.
Mumbai.
Yeah.
I was with Red Chilies. Probably know Shah Rukh Khan. So,
cool.
So
yeah, so company, that's an incredible amount of experience and knowledge. So what can they do then to up their game?
So now what I see all the companies abroad, anywhere in Hollywood companies, Canada or USA and stuff like that, they look India as like a back-end support, right? And because of the cost and stuff like that.
Right.
So what they should do, studios especially, is try not to please okay, we can do roto as well, we can do tracking and stuff like that. Create something which no one can do it. Create something which no one can do it. And for students as well, try to embrace some fire in you and try to learn creative side of things. Not just to get a job and getting a better salaries and stuff like that, because that will only last up a certain time. If you're in the game for longer, you have to have that fire in you to, in any situation, you will stay strong. So you need that creativity in you. So I find it's very difficult to get 3D guys in India, although compositing teams are pretty good. So the 3D side of things, they are a bit, still not there. There's not a lot of 3D, whether it's effects or whether it's lighting or texturing sort of thing. So I think the companies, for example, Scanline. I was in a different talk before with the Scanline, the guy from Scanline. So that Scanline has started from the guys who were two of these guys who wrote this simulation software, which picked up, and MPC started using it, and later on they've put the team together. Yeah,
the fluid stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. They did fluid. So, and they started executing simulation sequence and things like that, and then all of a sudden they have a people or studios everywhere. So the management, all that thing is fine, but what's really important is what can you offer different, better.
So you're saying that, okay, so if I'm a company in India, or if I'm a learner in India or a school in India, so basically don't try to just kind of do what they think is going to get them a job in maybe somewhere in the U.S. or Canada or London or something. Do what they maybe take a little longer at it, but do something that really makes sense for what their market is and or what works for them, and then get really good at that and get better than other people. Yeah.
So I mean, this is the way. So the problem, what's happening is like any guys who's kind of going and getting a job. So first, it start with the company. So majority of the company who's doing Hollywood work, like all the big blockbuster English films work, is they're mainly doing roto tracking and things like that, which is good. Which is all right to get started. I mean, like a lot of people getting stuck over there because they're getting to do good projects and things like that. What studio needs to do, they also needs to do something locally, working with the local films.
Got it. That's actually similar to your other answer. Like, if you're an individual, have a side project. If you're a studio, work on something locally as well as something globally. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Studio have to think that way as well.
Yeah. Cool. So, all right. And what about you, Chris? What do you have advice for Indian studios, students, schools, all that, upping their game?
So working with we often now it's just we work constantly with India, so which has been fantastic because it helped us out in a million binds. The one thing that's always fun is when you're working with India and Australia, so you have to sort of wake up really early in the morning and then stay up late at night to try to talk to both departments at different ends of the day. So I would say that to upping your game would be improving your creativity, right? In terms of like just keep always challenging yourself to come up with better things, as always. That's my advice for anybody. And B, learn how to say no.
What do you mean?
So I think that in terms of like getting a project, and if it's too much for you and it's too much, learn how to say no and say like, no, this is too much. Or
okay, well, it's really interesting. That's why I'm asking. Too much in what way?
Doing an amount of work that's not good for your health. Doing an amount
too much work, basically.
Too much work. Saying no to too much work. Saying no to not spending time with your family. I say like somebody who's in touch with their family and has like a lot of like at the end of my day, I close my laptop. I don't look at anything else. I go and play a video game, hang out with my family, and I don't worry about it. And just getting in my head. Too much of those years when I first started, I spent like all the time. Like after work, I'd go and I'd still try to like design the character that I was working on, and constantly working at home, working in my sleep. I'd lie awake at night, sort of like wondering, how am I going to fix this? Give your brain a chance to sort of like recover and get inspiration from other things. Go see a movie.
And maybe Janae can speak also more to this, because I did get the sense when I was there that was a particular problem in India, right? Where people are just working too much. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like 10 years, when I was working back in India, especially for local industry, man, I was working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
12 hours.
That's the sense I got.
Yeah, 13 hours.
I mean, it's not much different in Vancouver where I'm at, but I mean, I got the sense that there were beds that people slept in.
I used to sleep on the floors.
Yeah.
So, but that actually kind of helped me now, is like, because I've done like at the beginning of my career, I've gone through all that thing. So like, no matter how bad it gets, stress-wise, it can't be as bad as that one. So,
I have a similar thought, because I started off in the music industry, and we had beds there to sleep in and record bands. And no matter how bad film got, I always thought it can't be as bad as what I started with. So,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, and taking that,
there were guys who did like one of this, like for instance, one of the feature film project which we're doing was Mehuna, the first film for our. We were like a team of 12 people, and this was an important project for us. And some of the guys worked hard and stayed there for like weeks.
Yep.
going
So,
on.
so just to kind of summarize that. So basically, like, so for India to up its game, it should definitely take on international, but also local projects. And if they just feel like the scope of work is too far beyond the pale of what their staff can do or what they can do as individuals, then just say no, as Chris said, or maybe say we can accept a certain amount of the work, but we want to focus on quality and quality of life as well for our employees, and that'll up the quality of the work we produce as opposed to just kind of cranking out massive numbers of stuff, right?
I would respect that immensely if
Yeah.
somebody said that. I think that health and safety comes first in this industry, and like everybody knows that VFX is a very common place for people to get overworked and depressed and like that, and like it's just not worth it when you're making a movie about superheroes or trucks or planes. It doesn't matter. Like
some people think it matters.
People at top who are making the money think it matters.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that if everybody sort of bands together and decides like what's healthy for us all, I've personally lost a friend to suicide, Malcolm Angel, who was working with on Finch. So it just can't happen ever again. People need that time to download, and people who are happy and healthy make.
I mean, it's definitely not worth it. No,
absolutely not. No,
when it was back there in India, when With the Meaning started, I actually quite appreciated the way they were operating. They had very good culture, which I surprisingly, after moving to UK, working on these companies, I couldn't find that culture of giving time off to people, and they have like a show and tell. These VFX supervisors coming from LA, teaching them and stuff like that. So that sort of that was really healthy. And for some reason, I find the culture was better back there in India with the rhythm and news than I was working anywhere in Soho in London, because the competitiveness was so high over here. The studio couldn't afford to do that because the time, each hours is important, right? So they're thinking that money aspect sort of thing, and that's advantage of studios in India, that because the running cost is cheap and the living cost is cheap, so that you can use that as an advantage of having assign enough people in the task in your team, so it doesn't get stressy for one person or individuals, and they can give some time off and do show and tell and things like that, so that they are in a better position to be actually to encourage that creativity, to be honest, because the money.
That's really interesting perspective on that. They're actually in a pretty good spot to do that. So I think it's the actual end of, unlike the first time, I think it's actually the minute over on the end of the session here. So I'll just kind of wrap it up here. So we talked about project-based learning and how to bring in references and keep it to physics, be collaborative, work with other people, and so how effective that is, and actually upping people's game there. We got into the localities of the area and kind of how the collaboration works. Also, you guys mentioned how that's kind of changing with the online stuff and with the pandemic and things. And then let's see, we also talked about what it is to be creative, and you guys have really great opinions on kind of what creativity is, how it affects people's work, how it affects the career climb, and your place in a company and things like that. And I guess we finally ended on a user question with India upping its game and kind of the work-life balance, and just kind of what projects people should take on, what projects people should kind of have a place for, whether it's in your professional life and taking on your creative interests, or whether it's as a company and you want to choose like what kind of geographies and localities you want to take on and what kind of work-life balance you want to create for your employees and things like that. So yeah. And anything else finally to add, guys, as far as your comments on creativity in VFX and education?
I would just say that like it's we're all of us are pretty much in this industry because we love movies and we love TV shows and video games. Yeah. So I say like keep on being positive about it, keep watching stuff and being inspired, and like this next group of people, you are the ones who are going to inspire the children of the future. So it's all up to you to be as creative and stuff. Like I was passed down a bunch of things from people that inspired me. And passing it down to you, and hopefully you keep that going, and make this world a prettier place to live in.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, Chris. Anything you'd finally like to end on, Junaid?
Basically, I would say keep your creative fire alive, no matter like how bad a position you get in, and always find a time for yourself to do your own little small projects. And keep yourself motivated. Though if you're not enjoying it, certain department, find it what you enjoy it, and you don't have to be in that department. You can always change it. You just keep yourself motivated throughout.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.